Hey guys, welcome to another commentary done by Diggity. This is going to be game 3 between Worst and Gosufer. This is BSL Hasuleague, sorry, BSL 20 Hasuleague. It is the third match of the quarterfinals. Thus far, we are tied 1 apiece, but I gotta say, Worst, so Gosufer took a little bit of a risk game 1 to win it with the 3-gate, ignoring possible DT play. Worst really controlled it on Eclipse and looked very, very strong top to bottom that match, which definitely, I would say, might give Gosufer pause for thought. We're now on Radion, a bit more of a macro-oriented map. It is vertical spawns, so there is possibility for 2-gate shenanigans. And it's interesting because Worst was playing the way I felt Gosufer was, that last match, the way I felt Gosufer was playing throughout the Swiss bracket. He just looked pretty sharp through many stages. I also heard from Worst that he wasn't able to get a lot of practice in, which is making a lot of his play, honestly, all the more impressive. Friend of the chat comes in occasionally to drop a line, which I appreciate. I don't know if he's gotten to bias status yet, but he's getting there. He's getting there. Anyway, I will admit, when I see the Hasuleague guys go to Gosuleague and then go into Pro League like Doodle, I oftentimes will root for them over other guys, simply because how can I not? How can I not? I know commentators are supposed to remain unbiased. There's a handful of guys, I think I discussed that previously with Nesh. There's a handful of guys that I will end up being biased towards and rooting for. I think Nayoke and Machine, Nesh, one of those guys, Raz as well, and I need to work on it. And I need to push down the feelings and be callous and biased here. Shove it down, Diggity, shove it down. Anyway, we're scouting top left-hand corner on rotation. A slightly later scout again for Gosufer. He's going to make his way bottom left. We'll see if there's cross-map scouting after that. Again, mirrored build orders thus far. No advantage either direction. Cybernetics core dropping fairly rapidly. And even on the scouting patterns, the probes, it was slightly earlier from Worst, but I don't think that's going to translate into any sort of advantage. Defensive Zealot being constructed on both ends, neither player opting to skip it. I have seen at least around the A-S levels, a lot of Protoss skipping this initial Zealot, by the way, for reasons unknown, playing a little bit risky. Worst, by the way, going for the cross-map scout, so is going to end up finding his opponent's base, and he's going to end up with the informational advantage because this Zealot now can potentially block that ramp, and if Worst is on top of it, should be able to take out that probe before it is able to glean any information. So advantage to Worst overall. Does have the option to slide to DT, maybe do something along those lines, and should be able to hang out and spot whether there's, basically force that delay, can spot whether there's range, things along those lines, eliminate a good amount of build orders as a result. Range is queued up here for Worst, so it doesn't look like he's either doing a reverse skip or a DT or any sort of skip along those lines. Dragoon popping out. Worst still staying in the base, actually. A little bit late to sneak out, so I think this is going to be a dead worker. Yeah. Gets taken out. The probe, however, for Gosufer going to be relegated just to sit outside the base. 2-gate for Worst. I would be very shocked, honestly, if Gosufer did opt for a 1-gate robo. That would be a very brave play here in the midst of this. I feel like 2-gate is the way to... No, he's going 1-gate robo. Wow, okay. So 2-gate I feel like is the bread and butter. I feel like 2-gate robo is the general safe build. 1-gate robo, you have that slight advantage versus the 2-gate. But we'll see how this plays out. Worst actually ran away with it in the previous match where we had a similar build order situation, so we'll have to see. A little bit of a larger map though, in compared to Eclipse. I think the travel distance is slightly larger, but don't quote me. Do not quote me on that. I should actually go and study all this sort of stuff on my spare time, make StarCraft my life, like many. That's actually what I'm really impressed by these guys. These guys will grind out hours of practice, which I just find astounding. One, that people have hours to grind, but also just the dedication. And I don't mean this, I mean this wholeheartedly, that it's just, I find it impressive, which is part of why I think I do this so often, just to make sure that is highlighted. Worst might end up with the better part of this bargain. Initial shots look like they were on Gosufer's favor, able to slide out and pick off a Dragoon, the damaged Dragoon. getting focus fires. Second Dragoon wiped out, and now all of a sudden Gosufer in the commanding seat, doing a good job of microing away from that Zealot. The Zealot has been undamaged. This Dragoon looks like it's going to be able to sneak away. At least that is preserved, but Gosufer, I like that move out there from Gosufer because it does, it's to check that 2-gate press timing, I think, and doing a good job of wandering out, and I think he caught Worst off guard in that instance a little bit. It's one of those interesting things where it's like, one, you want to move your units across the map rapidly, but at the same time, if you move too rapidly, they're a little bit spread out to where you can end up in scenarios like that where they're not bunched up enough. You don't end up with the better battle position. Anyway, Gosufer, after winning that fight, going to go ahead and just drop the robotics, but queue up a Nexus a little bit earlier in the slot. Worst playing in a defensive situation. Pylon advantage for Gosufer, otherwise we're even on supply. Nexus now queued up. It looks like there's an observer before this, and I think Gosufer, because he won that fight, is feeling a lot more comfortable with this Nexus play. Worst sending out a probe, and Worst actually going for another assault onto the map. We got 6 Dragoons here. There's 6 on the opposite side. A probe sneaking out. The observer sees this army making its way forward. The observer holding position to go ahead and just watch it retreat. We do have that Nexus queued up now. About half a mark, almost half a mark behind Gosufer's Nexus. So Gosufer is going to have a slight worker advantage. He's already got the troop advantage. He's also critically going to end up with an information advantage as this observer, this observer making its way across. However, Gosufer's observer, and actually moving back from midfield. Did that go all the way down? I think it made its way down and decided to swing back. So Gosufer has full eyes. It could be that Worst was a little bit concerned about if there was observer, reaver, observer, that the secondary observer was going to be in position to pick off his observer, at which point he'd be in a difficult situation. By the way, we have shuttle speed being queued up here for Gosufer, transferring troops out a few more seconds before that Nexus is going to be finished. And a ever so slight supply lead on Gosufer's favor. The observer discovering his opponent's observer mid-map, now Worst making his way in. Do we have another? It looks like we had a shuttle queued up rather than an additional reaver. And Gosufer checking out his opponent's supply line to, one, see the probe saturation, but also recognize that that isn't, and really wants to check the gas, but really is able to check out the economic situation overall. Just a 2-worker lead currently for Gosufer, but it is at least something. Has supply capped himself briefly here. Second observer queued up. Are we going to see? Yeah, we got actually second reaver queued up rather than second observer and a shuttle. But does give an opportunity for Gosufer if he scoops up that second reaver, or if he scoops up the reaver, he could theoretically poke, but he'd be doing so at a reaver disadvantage. Opposite side, Worst, if he wants to take a risk and make his way out with a little bit less vision, could do so as well. Already dropping some pylons out in the field to see any invasive shuttles. Observers sitting over the wall. Nice positioning there from Worst. Also going to see that there's pylons across the 6 o'clock location, so if he does get aggressive with his own shuttle, he'll know the location to avoid. And Worst actually ending up with in the build order a second reaver slightly ahead here, and I think there was an additional observer. Yeah, there's this observer, and then that observer, delaying that additional reaver. We're up to 5 gates now on Gosufer's side of the map. 3rd and 4th gate just getting added, and those gateways being down for a longer period of time, allowing Gosufer to open up a bit of a lead. Oh, got some good shots. Hiding the shuttle back. Actually, I like that he's hiding the shuttle back, creating a little bit of confusion as to, okay, where's that shuttle? Shuttle speed kicked in, is making its way and just jetting across the map. Army is following, and we do have the Dragoons somewhat forward. So Worst has a general idea that the army is positioned out here, but he doesn't have a precise position. Gosufer has a pretty good idea because he saw that the army as it was marching out, and is doing a really good job of planting these observers along these artifact walls as well to see the armies as they're spread and making their way in. That could be a free shot with these 2 Reavers. Yeah, getting some free shots on the Dragoons. And with that, Worst going to retreat and loses 2, almost 3 Dragoons for free. Unloads his Reavers as well. The Observer pushing its way forward. Keep in mind, if with the positioning, if Worst draws this Observer up, he's a little bit at risk of losing it. And it wouldn't be able to provide the information he's hoping for. Nice angling around. By the way, we do have the Scarab damage upgrade in the midst of this. Observer actually ends up getting picked up by Gosufer. That is a little bit, or by Worst I should say, a little bit unlucky. The shuttle pinning the rest of this Dragoon army in. An interesting play here, Worst without Reavers trying to back up. This has opened up a massive attack where this army is out of position. And so instead, Gosufer going to scoop up and make his way right to the natural expansion. Pylons being blocked, dropped to try to blockade. But Gosufer also re-engaging with the bulk of his army in a funnel, and Dragoons are going to try to trickle in from the rear here as well. 1 Reaver down, however, and we got 2 Reavers to the north and 2 Reavers, I believe, still here, yeah, to the south. So Gosufer is going to be at a sizable, at least power punch disadvantage if he doesn't reposition and attack back to that natural, to the flank post haste. Now splitting the troops, he got 1 Reaver down there, was able to empty the natural expansion, so getting some good economic damage done. And Worst not able to move rapidly enough with the army that was stranded out in space to punish Gosufer's army. He's going to end up losing his Nexus instead. And wow, what a huge shot as he's entering here. So despite having 4 Reavers and a pincered army, because of the architecture and the timing, Gosufer able to speed in, wipe out the Nexus, and inflict horrendous damage on Worst. Also going to be able to scoop up with that Reaver, make his way out, and all of that was an interesting snowball effect from having that Observer slightly out of position earlier in that match, where you had Worst with his Observer slightly out of position and Gosufer with the heads up play, recognizing to try to cut it off, and finding an army that was completely skittering out of position to turn this assault all the way around. Great play from Gosufer here. Nexus attempted to be redropped here from Worst. The Reavers once again getting caught on open field. Shuttle's gone. Getting a lot of damage done though. Shuttle coming out, but it has nothing, and Worst gonna GG. Really well played from Gosufer there. Whew. Another intense one. Gosufer goes up a point, but I would not be shocked if this goes to 5 games. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for listening.